In the icy stillness of a forgotten park, two little girls huddle beside a stranger, not knowing their frozen fingers just touched the heart of a man who had lost everything, including them. He doesn't remember his name, they don't know he's their father, but destiny has a quiet way of reuniting what fate once tore apart. When memories return and truths unravel, love will either mend what's broken, or shatter what's left. Will a forgotten millionaire find his past in the eyes of the daughters he never knew he had? Before we dive into this heart-touching story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from right now, and what time is it over there? I love seeing how far these stories reach. It was a bitter morning in early winter, where frost kissed the grass and the breath of the world hung visibly in the air like whispered prayers, and amidst the empty park benches and leafless trees, two little girls, Sophie and Emma, twins with tangled blonde hair and wide blue eyes, tiptoed through the frostbitten grass with a paper bag of unsold muffins clutched in Emma's tiny hand, still warm from the old bakery's oven that allowed them to trade evening chores for leftover food. Their pink and yellow sweaters barely shielding them from the cold, they giggled softly, chasing a paper leaf until Emma's foot suddenly stopped near a bench under the biggest oak tree in the park, her hand tightening around her sister's as her voice faltered, whispering, "Sophie, someone's lying there." And there he was, still, pale, and motionless. A man in a wrinkled black coat and scuffed shoes, slumped sideways on the frozen bench, his dark hair damp with dew, his lips slightly parted as if mid-sigh, eyes closed, one hand hanging loosely near the ground, the other clutched around his chest like he had fallen asleep during a storm and forgot to wake up. And even though fear ran through them like ice water, Sophie took a cautious step forward, her breath trembling in the air as she leaned closer, whispering, "Mister, are you okay?" But he didn't move, not even a flinch, and a wave of something heavy washed over them, an ache, a strange grown-up sadness that felt too big for girls their age. Emma gently placed the muffin bag beside his leg and touched his hand, recoiling at how cold it was, and in that moment, the world seemed to pause. No birds, no wind, just two children and a stranger, alone in the quiet breath of morning, and even though their hands were shaking, they didn't run because something inside them knew he needed help, not fear. Sophie glanced at Emma, her voice cracking, "Sss, could we get Miss Carter?" But Emma shook her head fiercely. "No, he needs someone now." And with determination in their eyes, they pushed their tiny hands under his arms and tried to nudge him up, their shoes slipping on the frosted grass, their breath ragged, their cheeks pink with cold and courage. And finally, after one long push, the man's body slumped forward and groaned faintly, a deep sound like something broken trying to mend itself, and Emma gasped, "He's alive!" And the relief hit them like sunlight, warm and heavy, and they looked into each other's eyes with a silent promise. "We'll help him, no matter what." Sophie peeled off her scarf, wrapping it clumsily around his neck while Emma cupped her hands around his cold fingers, trying to share her body heat like her mother used to do when she was sick, and as the man stirred again, eyes fluttering weakly like shadows trying to find the light, he whispered something too quiet to understand, a whisper of pain, of hunger, of being lost too long. He opened his eyes halfway, and in that brief glimpse, Sophie saw the faintest spark of something, regret, sorrow, or maybe just the last trace of a soul hanging on, and when he saw the girls, his brow furrowed as if waking from a dream he couldn't quite remember, and then he passed out again. They knew they couldn't leave him here, not in the cold, not when every second could pull him farther away from life, so Sophie darted toward the bakery with Emma staying behind, stroking the stranger's hair gently, whispering, "It's okay, mister, we'll help you." And the morning sun crept up slowly, casting long golden shadows as if the world was watching, holding its breath for what these tiny warriors of kindness would do next. Miss Carter, the elderly bakery owner with silver hair and flour on her apron, rushed out with Sophie, and when she saw the man, her face shifted from concern to deep alarm. She didn't recognize him, but she saw what the girls had done, and with trembling hands, she helped them lift him onto a trolley cart used for flour sacks and wheeled him slowly back to the bakery, covering him with an old quilt that smelled like cinnamon and warmth. Emma walked beside him, clutching his lifeless hand, while Sophie kept her fingers on his wrist to feel the faint flutter of life like a moth trapped beneath glass. Customers stared as the girls pushed the man inside, but Miss Carter silenced the murmurs with a single glance. This wasn't gossip, this was mercy. They laid him by the bakery oven, hoping the warmth would coax life back into his limbs, and Sophie offered him a bite of muffin, just in case he woke, just in case he could feel their kindness even in sleep. Miss Carter called the local doctor, but it would be hours before he arrived, and so the girls stayed by his side, taking turns whispering little stories to him, about their school, about how they'd lost their mom months ago and now lived in the back room of the bakery, about how sometimes they dreamed someone would come and say they mattered too. They didn't know who he was, didn't know that he was the CEO of a global company, didn't know that his name, Alex Chen, was printed on business magazines across the world, but none of that mattered now. In their eyes, he was just someone who needed saving, and in that simple truth, the world tilted just a little toward hope again. The faint crackle of firewood inside the bakery's oven hummed like a lullaby against the walls, casting amber glows across the tiled floor as Alex stirred slowly under the patchwork quilt, his body trembling as warmth bled back into his frozen limbs, and with a small groan, barely louder than the wind brushing against the windows, his eyes fluttered open, confused, unfocused, flickering between the blurred ceiling lights and the faces leaning over him. Sophie gasped softly, her tiny hand instinctively reaching for his as she whispered, "He's waking up." And Emma, kneeling on the other side, leaned in with pious hope in her wide blue eyes. But when Alex tried to speak, no words came, only a dry, broken whisper that crumbled before it reached the air. Miss Carter quickly offered a cup of warm water, and as he sipped shakily, his eyes darted around in desperation, haunted by a terror that had no shape. Until finally, Sophie asked gently, "What's your name, mister?" And the bakery held its breath, as if even the walls were waiting, but Alex blinked slowly, his brows furrowed deep, and after a long, painful pause, he murmured, I don't know." And the weight of those words dropped like a stone in the center of the room. He looked at his own hands as though seeing them for the first time, studying the lines in his palms as if they held the answer, but nothing came. No memories, no flashes, not even the comfort of a name, only a hollow ache in his chest and a ringing in his ears that wouldn't stop. Emma leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't remember anything? Not even your home?" And he shook his head, wincing from the movement, as panic crawled across his face like a growing storm. He glanced toward the oven, toward the quilt, the bread shelves, the girls' tiny faces, and none of it sparked recognition. Only a quiet dread that wrapped around him like fog. Miss Carter stepped in gently, her voice warm but steady. "You collapsed in the park, and these girls, they brought you here, they saved your life." And at that, Alex looked at Sophie and Emma again, this time truly seeing them, their chapped lips, frost-bitten cheeks, threadbare sweaters, and something inside him softened, though he still didn't know why. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible. And the girls smiled with relief, not because he remembered, but because he was still alive. Alex sat up slowly with their help, his fingers trembling as he tried to stand, but his legs buckled, and Sophie caught his arm with surprising strength for someone so small, saying, "You don't have to do everything alone, mister," and for a moment, her words echoed in his chest like something he might have heard before, in another life. Miss Carter placed a warm hand on his back and guided him to the bakery's small wooden bench, where the scent of cinnamon rolls surrounded him like a mother's hug, and as he sat there, staring at the walls lined with photos and flour-dusted counters, a sense of unfamiliar comfort washed over him, like he didn't belong here, yet didn't want to leave. Emma offered him the muffin they'd left by his side earlier, now slightly cold but still soft, and he took it with a grateful nod, chewing slowly, as if the taste might bring something back. But his mind remained a blank canvas, each bite reminding him how empty his memory truly was. "What should we call you?" Sophie asked with a curious tilt of her head, and Alex paused, unsure how to answer, before whispering, "I don't know." And Miss Carter offered softly, "Until you remember, how about Mr. Nobody?" It was meant kindly, but something in him flinched at the sound, and the girls quickly jumped in. "No, that's too sad. You're not nobody. You're our friend." And their voices stitched something fragile inside him, something tender and new, even if his past remained missing. The doctor arrived an hour later, examined him with furrowed brows, and diagnosed him with temporary trauma-induced amnesia, common in people who'd suffered mental or emotional shock, though he couldn't say how long it would last. Alex watched the doctor with haunted eyes, hoping for answers, but none came, only gentle suggestions to rest, eat, and wait. "Your memory might come back, or it might not," he warned softly. As the doctor left, the room fell quiet again, except for the ticking of the wall clock and the bubbling sound of dough rising in the oven. Miss Carter offered him the small guest room upstairs, usually reserved for visiting bakers, and though pride clawed at his throat, Alex nodded. He had nowhere else to go. No name, no keys, no wallet, no past, just two little girls who refused to walk away. That night, Sophie and Emma tiptoed to his door with a handmade card they'd scribbled in crayon: "You are strong, you are kind, and we believe in you." And when he opened the door to find it taped beside his handle, something inside him cracked. Not painfully, but in the way ice begins to melt under spring's first sun. He held the card in his hands for a long time, eyes tracing every crooked letter, and though his memory was still lost in shadows, one truth burned quietly in his heart. He didn't feel alone anymore, and somehow, these two little strangers had given him more comfort in a day than he remembered feeling in a lifetime he could no longer recall. Alex stood in the dim hallway just outside the small guest room, holding the crumpled crayon card between his trembling fingers like it was a sacred relic from a forgotten lifetime, and as the soft sounds of the bakery settling into silence filled the air, floorboards creaking, pipes whispering, the faint hum of dough rising, he sank slowly onto the edge of his bed, staring at the door across the hallway where the twin girls slept, their little socks tucked under the crack to keep out the cold, and something inside him ached, not because he knew them, but because some part of him wished he always had. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes that vanished before he could grasp them, the faint sound of lullabies, a woman's voice calling his name, and tiny laughter echoing through a bright kitchen. But every time he tried to focus, it all shattered like glass in the wind. Morning arrived wrapped in the scent of cinnamon and cocoa, and when he came downstairs, Emma was sitting on the counter with flour on her nose, giggling as Sophie tried to teach her how to fold pastry, their laughter bouncing off the walls like sunlight through stained glass, and Alex stood there quietly, unnoticed, watching them as if watching a dream he didn't remember dreaming, his chest tightening for reasons he couldn't explain. When Sophie finally spotted him, her face lit up like morning light. "You're up! We saved you a cinnamon bun!" And Emma jumped off the counter and ran to him with a cup of warm milk, holding it with both hands like it was the most important gift in the world, and Alex took it gently, whispering a thank you that trembled with more emotion than he could hide. He sat with them at the little wooden table, their feet swinging above the floor, and they told him all about their daily routine, how they helped Miss Carter roll dough, wipe tables, refill sugar jars, and sometimes sing songs to lonely customers who'd lost their families too, and Alex listened like every word was a thread pulling him closer to something he didn't know he needed. When Emma asked what games he used to play as a kid, he paused, eyes distant, voice low, "I wish I could remember." And the girls looked at each other, then back at him with soft smiles and replied, "It's okay, we'll help you make new ones." And something about that promise made his throat tighten and his eyes sting. Later that afternoon, they invited him to help decorate the bakery window for winter, and as he clumsily taped snowflakes and crooked stars to the glass, Sophie laughed and said, "You're not very good at this." And for the first time since waking up, Alex laughed too, a raw, unfamiliar sound that startled even himself. Their joy was contagious, pure, and it began to stitch pieces into the hollow spaces inside him he hadn't realized were empty. While cleaning shelves, he found a dusty music box that Miss Carter said hadn't worked in years, but Emma pleaded with him to fix it. "You look like someone who's good with broken things." And though he didn't know why, his hands moved instinctively, twisting wires, aligning gears, and within minutes, the box played a soft lullaby that made Emma's eyes fill with tears as she whispered, "That was Mommy's favorite song." And Alex froze, the tune tugging painfully at something buried deep, as if his soul flinched before his mind caught up. He looked at the twins then, really looked, their identical blue eyes, the dimple on Emma's left cheek, the same he thought he'd seen somewhere, maybe in a mirror long ago, or in a photograph long forgotten. But the thought slipped away before he could hold it, and he smiled faintly, brushing off the goosebumps on his arms. Miss Carter watched from the kitchen doorway, her heart aching with something she couldn't quite name, watching Alex smile as the girls wrapped a scarf around his neck like he was their older brother or long-lost uncle. But the way they leaned into him, the way his hand naturally ruffled their hair, it all felt too natural to be coincidence. That evening, as the girls prepared a small puppet show using brown paper bags, Alex sat on the floor with his knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide, heart softening with every silly joke, every made-up story, every moment they looked at him like he belonged, like he was part of their tiny world, not just a stranger who'd collapsed in a park. They gave him a nickname, Mr. Cinnamon, because he always sat near the oven and smelled like cinnamon rolls now, and the way they said it made him laugh in spite of himself because no one had called him anything with such warmth ever, as far as he knew. Later Sophie handed him a drawing she made, 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled Us. And Alex stared at it in silence, swallowing hard as he traced their names with his finger, wondering why this image felt like something he'd once seen in a dream, or maybe in the corner of a memory trying desperately to return. That night, he tucked the picture into the drawer beside his bed, folding it carefully like it was the last piece of something precious, and as he lay down, he whispered their names. Sophie. Emma, like a mantra in the dark, like a melody his soul knew even if his mind didn't. Sleep came slowly, but it brought with it a strange sense of comfort. He was still lost, still nameless, still searching, but with every moment spent beside those girls, he felt a little more found. Morning light filtered through the lace curtains like spilled honey, brushing across Alex's face as he stirred from sleep, and for the first time since waking in that bakery, he felt something close to peace, not because his memory had returned, but because the emptiness inside him no longer felt as heavy. He rose quietly, folding the handmade picture with care and slipping it into his jacket pocket like a talisman, and when he descended the narrow wooden staircase, the scent of butter, sugar, and rising dough greeted him like an old friend, tugging at something distant, something familiar that refused to form fully in his mind. Miss Carter stood near the window, struggling to adjust the broken curtain rod, and without a word, Alex stepped forward, gently took the tools from her hands, and fixed it within minutes, his fingers moving like muscle memory. Even without knowing who he was, his hands remembered how to build, how to fix, how to serve. "You're quite the handy one," she smiled, brushing flour from her sleeves, and Alex gave a sheepish nod, not knowing how to explain that doing something useful made him feel human again. Emma came bounding in with a crooked drawing of a cupcake and announced, "Today is bakery cleaning day," like it was a national holiday, and Sophie handed him a tiny broom with a proud grin, declaring, "Everyone helps," and so they did. From scrubbing corners to organizing shelves, the 3 of them moved like a strange but beautiful orchestra, laughter echoing off the walls as if joy had finally taken root in the worn floorboards. At one point, the girls dared him to help them repaint the sign out front, and as he held the brush, tracing over faded letters, he found himself humming a tune he didn't recognize but couldn't stop. And when Sophie asked what song it was, he froze, the melody slipping away like a ghost before he could catch it. Later, while fixing the hinge of the bakery's back door, Alex caught sight of a chipped photo frame tucked behind some jars on a high shelf. It was a picture of a young family in front of a hospital, a woman holding twin baby girls, their faces blurred but their blue eyes shining, and his breath caught in his throat as his hand instinctively reached out, but Miss Carter gently pulled the frame away before he could ask, her voice hushed. "That belonged to someone who left long ago." And though she smiled, her eyes seemed to be hiding something. They shared lunch together on milk crates behind the bakery, the winter sun barely warming their faces as the girls passed him half a sandwich and talked about their dreams. Sophie wanted to open a flower shop with a window full of colors, and Emma hoped to be a singer who made people cry happy tears. And Alex listened, each word anchoring him to the present, each dream filling the silence inside his heart. Miss Carter returned with hot cocoa and sat beside him, her gaze quiet, and after a long pause she asked, "Do you remember anything new today?" And Alex stared at the sky, shaking his head. "Just flashes, like someone else's life that I watched from far away." And then, almost without meaning to, his voice lowered as he said, But there is one thing I keep seeing, a hospital room, a woman crying, someone saying, "You'll regret this." And he trailed off, the air thick with unspoken memories, and Miss Carter placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice trembling. Maybe the heart remembers what the mind forgets. And those words clung to him the rest of the day. By evening, Alex had repaired the oven's back fan, reorganized the pantry, fixed a broken stool, and even repaired the music box again when it began to squeak. Each small act bringing him unexpected comfort, like stitching pieces of himself back together with every screw tightened and hinge aligned. Emma and Sophie made him a paper thank you crown and insisted he wear it through dinner, and though he laughed at first, something about their tiny handwriting on each drawn jewel made him swallow hard as he placed it gently on his head, like it mattered more than any crown on earth. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and Miss Carter had retired to her room, Alex stood alone in the bakery's kitchen, staring at his reflection in the mixing bowl, same face, same eyes, yet unfamiliar, and he whispered into the quiet, "Who was I before this, and why does it hurt so much not to know?" And the silence gave no answer, only the ticking clock and the soft hiss of cooling ovens. Then, as he was wiping down the counter, he spotted something in the back cabinet, an old box labeled Lost Found, filled with gloves, scarves, and forgotten trinkets, and beneath them all, a folded newspaper clipping yellowed with time, half torn but legible, showing a photo of a much younger man receiving an award with the words, "Alex Chen, youngest innovator of the year," and the photo made his heart jolt, made his hands tremble, because it was him, different hair, sharper jaw, but undeniably him, and yet, he didn't remember a single thing about that moment. He clutched the clipping in disbelief, eyes wide, breathing uneven, and stared at the name beneath the photo like it belonged to a ghost he once knew. Alex Chen, his name, his truth, maybe his beginning. Footsteps echoed behind him, and he quickly tucked the paper away as Emma rubbed her eyes, whispering, "Mr. Cinnamon, do you think people can forget who they are, and still be good?" And Alex knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, replying softly, "Maybe. Sometimes forgetting makes you remember what really matters." And in her sleepy smile he saw something so painfully familiar, he almost cried, but instead he carried her to bed, tucked her in beside Sophie, and stood there long after they drifted off, the clipping burning in his pocket, the warmth of their world holding him tighter than any memory ever had. The bakery was quiet except for the soft hum of the oven. The twins, seated on flour sacks like tiny queens on makeshift thrones, peeked at Alex as he gently rubbed his eyes, pretending no tears had fallen. He offered a crooked smile, one that didn't reach his eyes, still haunted by the memory he'd shared. Emma, the more curious one, nudged her sister softly and whispered something. Lily nodded, reached into the pocket of her tattered blue jacket, and pulled out something wrapped in a crinkled plastic pouch. "Mr. Alex," she said gently, tiptoeing toward him, "we want to show you something." He turned, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling to her level. Her little fingers unwrapped the pouch carefully, like it held treasure. Inside was a slightly faded photograph, creased at the edges, the ink softened by time. In it, a young woman with kind eyes and a tired smile held two newborns wrapped in identical pink blankets. "That's our mommy," Emma said, standing beside her sister now. "She always keeps this photo under her pillow, but we borrowed it. We thought, maybe it'll make you feel better." Alex took the photo slowly, as if it might vanish if he blinked too hard. The woman's face struck him like a thunderbolt. His breath caught, something in her eyes, the shape of her nose, the curve of her smile. It all felt like home, like a dream he couldn't wake from. Where did you say your mommy is?" he asked, voice trembling. "In the hospital," Lily replied softly. "She fainted a week ago. We're trying to sell cookies to help pay for her medicine." The room tilted slightly in Alex's mind, his heart pounded. That face. He had seen that face before, in dreams he couldn't name, in fragments that played like broken film reels behind his eyes. He stared longer. The babies, their tiny blue eyes, their curly golden hair, they looked exactly like Emma and Lily. His hands began to shake. He tried to smile again, but it faltered. She looks familiar," he whispered, more to himself than to them. Emma tilted her head. "Really? You know her?" Alex didn't answer. He stood and paced slowly, the photograph pressed to his chest. A fog rose in his brain, not painful but thick with emotion, like some wall had cracked just enough to let the truth leak in. The woman's name danced on the edge of his tongue, but it wouldn't form. A memory teased him, fingers laced with hers under city lights, laughter echoing in the distance, the feel of her kiss goodbye at an airport. He clenched his fists. I don't know, he muttered, frustrated by his own mind's refusal to give him peace. I feel like I do, but everything's still blurry. The girls looked at each other, unsure. It's okay, Emma said, placing a tiny hand on his arm. You're kind to us. That's what Mommy says matters the most. Her touch grounded him. Warm. Real. He knelt again, eye level with them. Can you tell me more about your mom? He asked. What's her name? Her name's Eliza, Lily whispered. She used to be happy, but not anymore. She cries when she thinks we're asleep. That name. Eliza. It crashed into him like a wave. His mouth fell open. That name. 1,000 stars burst behind his eyes. That voice. That laugh. That day in Central Park. A girl with wild dreams and fire in her soul. His Eliza. But, how? He leaned back, gasping. Eliza, he repeated, like a prayer or a curse. My God. You okay, Mr. Alex? Emma asked, stepping closer. I think I knew her, he said slowly. I don't remember how, but my heart, it remembers her. Emma climbed up onto his knee. Then maybe your heart knows us too. Alex looked at her, and in her eyes, he saw something that shattered him, a reflection of himself, of who he might have been before memory stole him. Her little hand reached to his face and gently wiped away a tear he hadn't noticed falling. Sometimes, she said innocently, Mommy looks at us like she's remembering someone too. Alex wanted to ask 1,000 questions. How long ago? Where did Eliza live before? What happened to the twins' father? But the words stayed stuck in his throat, overwhelmed by emotion. His fingers clutched the photo like a lifeline. Emma slid off his knee and sat beside Lily again. Do you want to meet her? Lily asked quietly. Alex blinked. Your mom? The twins nodded. She's still in the hospital, Emma added. But maybe seeing you would make her smile. She hasn't smiled in a long, long time. He looked at them. Two fragile souls wrapped in courage, unaware they were slowly stitching back the torn pieces of a man. Yes, he said hoarsely, I'd like that very much. Outside, the winter wind brushed gently against the window. The oven timer dinged, but no one moved. The girls' eyes lit up as if they had done something miraculous. And they had. In a way, they had just brought a man back to life. As Alex stood, photo still in hand, he turned to them with a strange calmness. Can I keep this, just for tonight? They nodded in unison. He placed it gently on the small table beside the couch where he'd been sleeping. Then he sat between them, and for the first time in days, he didn't feel lost. He looked at their tiny feet swinging off the edge of the sack, their cheeks pink from the cold, and he knew he wasn't just remembering. He was beginning to feel whole again. The room was silent, but Alex's mind roared like thunder. That photo, that woman, her eyes, her smile, something about her shook him to the core. His breath hitched, fingers trembling as he handed the picture back to little Lily. What's her name? He asked, voice unsteady. Mommy? Ellie whispered, as if the name alone could melt glaciers. Alex blinked, his vision blurring. And, where is she now? She's sick, Ellie said, clutching the doll tighter. She's been in the hospital since last week. The nice lady at the bakery helps us visit when we have enough money for the bus. A lump formed in Alex's throat. Can I come with you next time? Lily's eyes widened. You want to meet Mommy? He nodded slowly. I need to. By afternoon, the bakery owner had arranged a ride. Ellie held Alex's hand while Lily sat beside him in the car, quietly humming. The city blurred outside the windows, but Alex felt every heartbeat with piercing clarity. He didn't know what waited at the hospital, but something told him answers were finally chasing him. They arrived at County General, its towering gray walls exuding a strange mix of cold efficiency and hidden hope. The automatic doors whooshed open, letting in a rush of sterilized air. Alex's feet hesitated at the entrance, his heart slamming against his ribs. You okay, Mr. Alex? Lily asked gently. He forced a smile. Let's go find your mom. They walked hand in hand through the winding corridors. Every beep, every passing stretcher, every hushed nurse's voice seemed to echo inside Alex's skull like whispers from a past he couldn't grasp. At the reception, the girls pointed. Room 308, the nurse said. End of the hall. As they neared the elevator, a woman pushing a cart of linens rounded the corner. Her eyes scanned the three of them, then froze on Alex. She stopped in her tracks. The cart rolled slightly before she caught it. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Sir? She whispered. Alex turned. Yes? She stepped forward slowly, her eyes filling with moisture. Is your name Alexander Carter? The hallway stilled. Alex's stomach dropped. I don't know, he admitted, voice barely audible. The woman, now clearly a nurse, cupped her mouth. My God! Lily looked up. You know him? The nurse blinked, struggling to breathe. I used to work at Carter Memorial, 15 years, he was the CEO. Ellie gasped. He's rich? The nurse nodded slowly, tears glistening. He disappeared in a boating accident 5 years ago. Everyone thought he drowned, but his body, it was never found. Alex staggered back, bracing against the wall. Stop! The nurse's eyes softened. You're him. I'd know those eyes anywhere. You were kind. You used to leave toys for the children's wing every Christmas. His knees buckled slightly, the weight of her words pressing on him like an avalanche. Then why don't I remember anything? The nurse stepped forward, gently placing her hand over his. Sometimes the brain protects itself, especially after trauma. If you were alone, injured and lost, you might have blocked it all out. Lily clutched his coat. Does that mean you had a family? Alex couldn't answer. His eyes stayed locked with the nurse's, a war of realization beginning inside him. Ellie pulled the photo from her pocket again. This is Mommy, she said, showing the nurse. The nurse stared at the image, and gasped. Is this Amelia? Amelia Hart? Both girls nodded. That's our mommy. The nurse's hand flew to her heart. She was his. She used to work for Mr. Carter, before he vanished. She loved him, said he was the only man who ever saw her soul. Alex's legs gave out and he sat on the bench, gripping his head. My name is Alexander Carter? He whispered. Yes, the nurse said firmly. And if these are Amelia's daughters. Her voice cracked and she turned to the girls. When were you born, sweethearts? 6 years ago, Lily said. Almost 7, Ellie corrected. The nurse gasped. Her hand trembled. She slowly looked at Alex. You vanished just before Amelia left Carter Memorial. No one knew why, but she was pregnant then. She never told anyone who the father was. The girls looked back and forth between them. Are you saying? Alex choked, voice dry and thin. The nurse nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I think these are your daughters. The air turned thick, electric, heavy. Alex looked at Ellie, then Lily. For the first time, their little faces felt like reflections in a broken mirror he had never known he missed. No, he whispered, overwhelmed. No, this can't be real. But Lily reached out and touched his hand. Then why does your heart feel like mine? He clutched her hand instantly, as if life depended on it. The past didn't matter. The truth was here, beating between their palms. I need to see Amelia, he said. The nurse nodded, gently guiding them toward room 308. As the door creaked open, soft beeping greeted them. A frail woman lay in the bed, eyes closed, chest rising weakly, her golden hair splayed like a halo. Machines whispered around her. Alex stepped forward. Each breath of hers pulled something from inside him. Amelia, he whispered. Her eyes didn't open, but her lips moved. One word. Alex? He fell to his knees, breaking inside, as Ellie and Lily stood frozen behind him. The nurse stepped back and covered her mouth. Alex reached out, trembling. I'm here. I'm so sorry. The nurse's clipboard trembled in her hands as she stared at Alex with wide, glassy eyes, her breath catching like a whisper trapped in time. and in that moment, the sterile hospital hallway seemed to fold into silence as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Alex, noticing her sudden stillness, looked at her with concern and confusion, unaware that the strands of his missing past had just begun to unravel, piece by fragile piece. "Sir, your name is Alex, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice cracking as though it carried a decade of hidden sorrow, and when he nodded slowly, a flicker of fear and recognition passed through her like lightning through a stormed tree. The girls looked up, sensing the tension, their small hands gripping his tighter, as if they could protect him from the storm they couldn't see. "You were reported dead 10 years ago," she finally uttered, her voice barely audible, but the words slammed into Alex's chest like a tidal wave breaking open a locked vault. Inside him, his knees almost buckled, the edges of a memory fluttering at the back of his mind like a torn photograph in the wind. The nurse, her name tag reading Iris, stepped closer, her voice now trembling with urgency. "Wait here," she said, vanishing down the corridor. The girls exchanged worried glances, their young hearts beating like hummingbird wings. Minutes passed like hours until Iris returned, clutching a time-worn envelope, its edges yellowed and soft from age, sealed but cracked at the corners. This was never supposed to be lost," she said, handing it to Alex, who stared at it as if it might bite. "Your fiancé left it after your accident. I was the shift nurse that night, but the letter never reached your room. I kept it all these years, not knowing who you truly were, until I saw you today." Alex's fingers trembled as he took the letter, his heart pounding violently, echoing through his ribcage like a war drum. He carefully peeled open the flap, revealing handwriting that stirred something deep inside his bones, something achingly familiar. The words unfolded in front of him like a ghost returned from the grave. "My dearest Alex, they say you won't wake up, but I believe in you, I always have. Our daughters, yes, daughters, are here, just born. Twins. I named one Lily and the other Hope. I wish you could see them. They have your eyes. If you ever read this, please find us. I'll be waiting, no matter how long it takes." The letter shook in his hands as tears blurred the ink. His lips quivered as he read the lines again, as if they would rearrange into something less devastating. The girls, hearing their names, peeked at the letter curiously, sensing something big, something that felt like a shifting sky. "Lily, Hope?" Alex whispered, staring at them now with a dawning realization clawing at his heart. "That's us," Hope said softly, pointing to herself. "Mommy said Daddy had blue eyes just like yours," Lily added with a trembling smile, unaware of the storm behind Alex's silent gaze. "Where's your mother now?" he asked, his voice hoarse, like dry wind. "She's upstairs," Hope replied, her voice suddenly quiet. "She's very sick." Without a word, Alex moved toward the elevator, Iris guiding him as the girls followed closely. They reached room 214, the door half open. Inside lay a frail woman, pale against the white sheets, her beauty weathered by time and pain, but when Alex stepped inside, his breath left him as if he'd been punched in the chest. Her name escaped his lips like a long-lost prayer. Claire. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice, disbelief washing over her like a sunrise after endless night. "Alex?" she croaked, tears welling instantly. "It can't be. They told me you died." His legs gave way as he dropped to his knees beside her bed, clutching her cold hand to his chest. "I forgot everything," he choked out, "but they found me, our daughters. They saved me." Claire looked at the girls standing behind him, their eyes wide and moist, as if destiny had returned home. "They've always believed you were out there. I showed them your picture every night," she whispered, brushing back Hope's hair as the girl leaned against the bed. Alex pressed her hand to his face, overcome by the weight of lost years and the miracle of rediscovery. "I don't know how I got here, I didn't know who I was, but they saw something in me before I even knew myself." Claire tried to smile but coughed instead, her body weak, her soul still burning bright. "You came back, that's all that matters. I'm here now, I'm not going anywhere," he vowed, his voice like thunder laced with lightning. "You hear me? I'm taking care of all three of you." The girls climbed onto the bed, one on each side, their tiny hands intertwining with their mother's and Alex's, forming a circle of warmth that even time couldn't undo. Iris stood quietly in the doorway, tears sliding down her cheeks. The broken pieces of the past had begun to realign, not perfectly, but beautifully. For in the quiet room where pain once lingered, hope had returned in the form of a forgotten letter, a name without memory, and two brave little girls who unknowingly brought their family back together. Alex stood frozen, the worn letter still trembling in his hand, the world around him a blur of silent chaos. The bakery's soft light flickered above as the girls giggled in the corner, unaware that their laughter was tightening the noose of truth around his soul. His knees buckled, and he sank slowly onto the wooden floor, his breath caught in his chest like a trapped sob. He blinked at the words in the letter again. Alex, they are yours, our daughters. I tried to tell you, but they kept us apart. Each line of ink now branded his heart like fire. No, no, he whispered, but it wasn't denial, it was disbelief wrapped in agony. The memories he couldn't grasp before now crashed like a flood, a laugh in the rain, a woman's soft voice humming lullabies, tiny feet tapping across hardwood floors. He clutched his chest as the wave of forgotten fatherhood slammed into him, fierce and unrelenting. Those eyes, those blue eyes, he choked, turning slowly to stare at the girls. They were decorating a cake with the elderly bakery lady, their hair falling in golden curls just like hers. I know you, he whispered, but they didn't hear. His hand reached out, fingers trembling like a man grasping at the edge of a dream. He stood, staggered like a wounded soldier, and approached the girls. Lily, Emma. He said their names like a prayer returning home. They turned, eyes wide and sparkling, oblivious to the storm behind his trembling smile. How do you know our names? Lily asked, clutching her doll protectively. Because... His voice cracked as tears spilled down his cheeks. Because I gave you those names. Years ago. Before I lost everything. The bakery went silent. Even the ticking of the wall clock seemed to pause in reverence of the moment. Emma's little brows furrowed. You mean... you're... He couldn't say it. His heart was collapsing under the weight of guilt and love. I didn't know, he whispered, his voice breaking completely. I didn't know I had angels walking this earth without me. The old bakery owner stepped back, her eyes wide with stunned realization. The girls exchanged looks, then took a step toward him, hesitant, curious. Are you our daddy? Lily asked, her voice soft as snowfall. He fell to his knees before them, a man stripped of pride, wrapped only in longing. If you'll let me be, he wept. I will never leave you again. Never. They didn't speak. Emma reached out first, placing her small hand on his tear-stained cheek, her blue eyes glimmering with something ancient, recognition. Lily joined, and in the middle of a humble bakery filled with flour and forgotten pasts, a broken man was stitched back together by two little hands. You're warm, Lily whispered, like Mommy said you'd be. Alex sobbed into their arms, holding them like he could press lost years back into existence. I'm sorry, he gasped, for everything, for not being there, for not knowing, for every night you went to sleep wondering where I was. Emma leaned in, resting her head against his chest. It's okay, Daddy. You're here now. The word Daddy shattered the last wall around his heart, and he held them tighter, like he was afraid they'd vanish if he let go. The bakery lady wiped her tears quietly, whispering to herself, God does miracles when we least expect them. Alex kissed both their foreheads, trembling. You saved me, he said. The day you found me in that park, it wasn't just kindness, it was destiny bringing me home. The door creaked behind them. The nurse from the hospital entered slowly, holding a folded paper in her hand and a trembling lip. I knew it, she murmured, eyes glistening. I was the one who helped your love write that letter. I've been waiting for this day for years. Alais. X looked up, his arms still around the girls. Where is she? He asked with broken urgency. The nurse's smile was sorrowful but soft. She's been fighting. For you. For them. She's alive, Alex. His heart skipped, surged, collapsed, and rose again all in one beat. He turned to the girls. Will you come with me? To see your mom? Emma nodded instantly, and Lily smiled, wiping his tears like he was her child. Let's go home, Daddy. And with those words, the storm inside him broke, cleansing, not destroying, and the sun finally began to rise again. Alex sat trembling on the edge of the bakery's old wooden chair, his face buried in his hands, his breath heavy with disbelief. The storm inside him was no longer just memory, it was blood, it was love, it was them. The twins stood silently, unsure if they had done something wrong, their little fingers intertwined like always when the world around them felt too big. Lily slowly stepped forward and gently tugged on the sleeve of his coat. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, soft enough to break a heart. "Are you mad at us?" Alex looked up, eyes rimmed red, the tears still fresh. "Mad?" he breathed, stunned. "No, sweetheart, But words caught in his throat. Emma joined her sister, her blue eyes shining like stars wet with fear. "We didn't mean to lie," she said carefully. "We didn't know you were our daddy either, but Mommy used to say." She trailed off, looking at her sister for strength. Lily squeezed her hand, then looked up at Alex. "Mommy showed us your picture once. She said you were brave, kind, and had eyes that carried oceans. We used to stare at that photo and call you daddy when no one was watching." Alex's chest tightened, 1,000 emotions rushed through him, all too loud and all too late. He shook his head slowly, like trying to rewind time. You called me daddy?" Emma nodded, tears slipping down her cheek. "All the time," she whispered. "Sometimes I would dream that you'd come through the door and carry us both, like heroes in those bedtime stories." Alex swallowed the lump in his throat. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't I know?" He asked the universe, not the girls. Lily, kneeling by his feet now, reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn button, once sewn into a navy blazer. "This fell off Mommy's coat. She kept it from your jacket," she said. She said it reminded her that love never dies, even if people forget. Alex took the button as if it were made of glass. A piece of his past now fit perfectly into his shaking hand. "I never forgot you," he said hoarsely. "I forgot myself, but never the love that lived in me. That ache, it was always you." Emma leaned in and whispered, "So, can we call you Daddy now? Out loud?" Alex let out a cry that was both joy and pain, pulling both girls into his arms like they were oxygen. "You never have to ask again," he choked out. "You always could, you always did." The moment wrapped around them like a warm blanket in the winter of their lives. Emma pressed her ear to his chest. "It sounds different now," she said. "Your heartbeat, it feels like home." Lily nodded. "It feels like Mommy's stories coming true." Alex kissed their foreheads one by one. "No story could be more beautiful than this," he whispered. "I was lost in the world, but your hearts found me." Just then, the bakery's front bell rang as the door creaked open, but the world outside no longer mattered. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, Alex felt whole. "I want to know everything," he said. "How you lived, what you dreamed, what made you cry, what made you laugh. Everything." Emma smiled. "We sell dolls for food," she said simply. "Because Mommy said toys don't fill bellies, but hope can." Alex's soul shattered at that. "You should have never had to choose between food and childhood," he whispered. Lily tilted her head. "But now that we have you, does it mean we can be kids again?" His nod was fierce, immediate. "Not just kids. Why? You'll be my kids. Forever." The word forever sat in the air like a sunrise, warm, golden, promising. They didn't need anything more. No riches, no rooms of gold, just the man whose arms now held them like an anchor in their storm. "Can we go visit Mommy?" Emma asked suddenly. "She always said if she saw you again she'd tell you that she never stopped loving you." Alex's breath hitched. "I need to see her. Right now." Lily hesitated, her lip quivering. "She doesn't talk much anymore. She gets tired." "I'll wait forever just to hear one word from her lips," he promised. Emma clutched his hand. "Then let's go now, Daddy." The way she said it, without fear, without doubt, made the world shift on its axis. Daddy. Finally. Not in dreams, not in whispers, but in reality. As they stood together in that tiny bakery that had become a cradle of miracles, Alex felt something new. A beginning. A life with them. A chance to repair what was broken and rewrite the ending that fate had once stolen. He looked at the two little girls, his daughters, and whispered, Let's go find the rest of our story. Together. Alex stood in silence, tears still fresh on his cheeks, his heart weighted by years of absence, and a love he thought lost. But in front of him stood two little girls who had been calling him Daddy in their hearts long before he even remembered who he was. Their tiny fingers wrapped around his hands, grounding him in a truth he could no longer run from. Rain tapped gently on the bakery windows, as if the sky itself was listening to the quiet rebirth happening within. Lila stepped forward, her voice trembling like the first note of a lullaby. "If you stay, can we make cookies together?" Alex's chest quivered as he slowly knelt, looking at both girls eye to eye, no longer a stranger, but their father. "I'll make cookies, cakes, or even burn the oven, as long as I can be with you," when he whispered. Sophie giggled through her tears, wiping her face with her sleeve, nodding like she had waited her whole life to hear that. Behind them, the smell of warm dough and cinnamon filled the air. The bakery, once just a place of survival, was now a cradle of healing. Mrs. Jensen watched silently from behind the counter, her eyes moist, her hands folded near her heart. "You remind me of the man she used to talk about," she finally said, approaching slowly. Alex turned to her, his voice raw. She talked about me?" Mrs. Jensen smiled faintly. "Every night she worked late here, she spoke of a man named Alex, a dream she buried, but never stopped loving." He closed his eyes, the weight of those words cracking something open deep inside him. The girls pulled him toward the kitchen, like they wanted to fold him into their routine, as if love didn't need time to grow, just truth to breathe. They handed him aprons too big for them and one just right for him. Alex tied it slowly, almost ceremonially, like wrapping the final ribbon on a long-lost gift finally returned. Sophie pointed to a recipe scribbled on the wall. "Mom's favorite. She taught us from memory." He touched the faded ink, his fingers trembling. Did she forgive me?" Lila's voice was soft. "She cried a lot. But she always told us to believe you were kind, just lost." A sharp ache thudded in his heart. Grief for the time stolen, and awe at the innocence that had waited for him. Rain now poured harder, turning the streets outside into a blur, but inside the world was finally becoming clear. They measured sugar and flour with clumsy grace, laughing when Alex sneezed into the cocoa. Sophie ran to get milk, only to return with a carton almost her size. "Daddy, catch," she called, and his heart stilled at the word. He caught the milk with both hands, but what he really caught was a future. "Say that again," he whispered. She looked up, confused but smiling. "Daddy?" A tear slipped down his cheek as he kissed her forehead. "That's the most beautiful word I've ever heard." Mrs. Jensen Brown, aught in a worn photograph, the only picture of their mother left in the bakery. Alex stared at it, tracing the edges with reverence. "I loved her," he whispered. "I didn't forget her. Life just took her from me before I could fight for her." Lila gently reached out. "Now you can fight for us." He looked at them, at the flour dusting their hair, at the joy beginning to return to their cheeks, and nodded. "I will fight for you both, every single day." Just then, the bell above the bakery door jingled. A sound so ordinary, but now it felt like the opening of a new life. It was the nurse from the hospital. She approached slowly, holding a small, water-damaged envelope. "I found this behind her locker," she said. "I think it was meant for you." Alex took it carefully, unfolding it with hands that almost trembled. Inside was a letter, faded and fragile, written in his lost love's handwriting. "Alex, if you ever find your way back, don't look for forgiveness, just love them. That will be enough." His breath caught. The words felt like a final blessing from a soul that still lived within her daughters. He pressed the letter to his heart, and the girls wrapped their arms around him without asking why, they just knew. "Daddy, can we sell cookies tomorrow?" Sophie asked, eyes sparkling. He chuckled. "Only if I get to be your assistant." The rain began to slow, like the storm outside had finished grieving too. Mrs. Jensen brought out 3 steaming mugs of cocoa and placed them on the counter. "To second chances," she said, raising her cup. "To family," Alex replied, his voice finally strong. "To Mommy," the girls said in unison, lifting their mugs skyward. Outside, the clouds slowly parted, revealing a soft golden light that fell across the bakery's windows. People began passing by again, some glancing in, curious about the laughter inside. A family sat huddled at the wind. Al Booth, a scene once lost in time, now made real. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the air around him settle like peace wrapping around his soul. "Let's name a cookie after her," Lila suddenly said. "Mommy's memory," Sophie suggested. He nodded, heart swelling, "and we'll give one away free to every lonely soul who walks through that door." The girls smiled, proud and excited. They began writing the new name on the chalkboard above the counter, letters shaky but filled with love. Alex stood behind them, watching them beam with purpose. He thought of all the money he once had, the companies, the city lights. None of it mattered now. This, he realized, was wealth. The bakery didn't need chandeliers or a logo. It had warmth, it had history, and now it had hope. The girls pulled him into a group hug again, and this time, he didn't hold back. "I missed every moment. But I promise, I'll never miss another," he said. The bell chimed once more, but they didn't move. They were home. In a bakery that stood through storms, with laughter that rose from flour and forgiveness, with a name written in hearts, not just signs. The world outside could keep spinning, but inside the bakery in the rain, a father, 2 daughters and a memory had found there forever, and in that moment, love had finally come home.